All good? All right.
Action.
So thank you for coming to this class. This is a class, actually the third in a series that I've been giving on Kabbalah of AI. And, you know, this is something new, right? Artificial intelligence. It's been progressing over these past decades. But there's timeless wisdom from the Jewish tradition that can inform on this time that we're living in now. Because it can seem very confusing. It can seem like, well, where are we headed? So before we are able to figure out where we're headed, we have to see where we came from, right? And put it in the perspective of the past and the traditions of the past. And also, specifically in my classes, I focus on Kabbalah, which is the mystical side of Judaism. Mm-hmm. What we call like the inner dimension, or the, I don't like the word esoteric, but kind of like the mysteries of creation is how I like to call it. And so, you know, I started off, I printed this for a previous class, you know, some scary imagery, right? You have here this robotic hand writing a journal entry, and you here have a robot hand playing the piano. So actually, the people that are watching can't see, but in the back there's actually a piano. So it's actually, I didn't know that when I brought this to the class. So there's also something called divine providence or synchronicity that, you know, even there's a piano here, and so it reminds us that what does it mean that we have these human creative endeavors? And specifically tonight, we're going to be focusing on writing, specifically books. We're in a library right now, so I thought it would be a good time for that. Also, we're right before the Jewish New Year called Rosh Hashanah, where we ask, and this is for everyone everyone that descended from Adam and Eve, which is everyone, because that's celebrating their birthday, is the Jewish New Year, celebrating their birthday. So that applies to both Jews and non-Jews. So what does it mean to be human? What does it mean that God breathed a soul into us, right? And also, what does it mean when we ask to be written and inscribed in the book of life, right? We all, God willing, will have a happy and a healthy new year, starting with this holiday starting on Friday night. So what does it mean that we have a book of life? So we're going to be talking about the book of life, right? And it's very appropriate because we're in a library right now. So, So first, and this is something a person that I brought in the past. The hero of tonight is a computer professor of blessed memory by the name of Joseph Weizenbaum. And Joseph Weizenbaum was a professor at MIT. Starting in 1964, he developed the first chatbot called Eliza, named after Eliza Doolittle of My Fair Lady. Mm-hmm. And actually, interestingly enough, he named Eliza after a person. He named his chatbot after a person who was always progressing throughout the story, apparently, and always learning and developing. It's called the story arc, right? Every good story has to have a story arc if you want a character development. So at that time, his chatbot did not have the ability to improve. Every improvement he had to do manually. And what was the nature of his program? Well, it was a therapist. Why a therapist? Because a therapist can just repeat back what the people are saying. So he didn't have to have a whole huge vocabulary in order for it to seem like people were chatting with a real person. Again, this is talking about 1964. Mm-hmm. And so here's an example that was on Wikipedia. So this is Eliza asking, is something troubling you? Men are all alike, was this person that was typing. What is the connection, do you suppose? They're always bugging us about something or other. Can you think of a specific example? Well, my boyfriend made me come here. It is important to you that your boyfriend made you come here? That's Eliza responding. Again, it's just repeating back the same words, just changing it a little bit. He says I'm depressed much of the time. I am sorry to hear that you are depressed. It's true, I am unhappy. Can you explain what made you unhappy? So famously, there was a story of Joseph Weizenbaum's secretary at MIT, that when she was playing around, and this is probably her that was playing around with Eliza, she asked him to leave the room so she could have some privacy with this chatbot. This is 1964. And so famously, Weizenbaum said, I had not realized that extremely short exposures to a relatively simple computer program could include powerful delusional thinking in quite normal people. He was so shocked that people were so convinced by his program. So he spent the rest of his life railing against this idea that robots and AI and computers could be somehow sentient, somehow human-like, right? And he was saying it's not going to happen, right? It's just if you think so, it's just delusional thinking. So this and this fight has continued on until today, where you have people that are, including someone who recently had to leave Google because he's like, oh, they're sentient now, but no, it's that's not the case. So that's part of a little, and he's going to be our hero for tonight as we go forward with this, because really we want to understand, well, what's a human? You know, I spend a lot of time in LA, and right now there's the writer's strike, right? What is one of the core issues of the writer's strike is AI, right? Whether what role AI is going to play. So it's obviously a very difficult situation. You have a lot of people living just on residual paychecks, and you're talking about LA here, not a very cheap place. But one good thing that's coming from it is you have people that are on their picketing, and I saw this on an article, and I see it all around. You people on their cars, they write all sorts of messages, and you have a lot of no AI messages, but you also have, they don't have a soul, and we have a soul messages, right? So you have all of a sudden people are talking about this thing called a soul in LA, a very progressive modern place, and they're talking about, well, we have a soul, right? We're human after all, right? So that's a very good outcome from a very trying and difficult situation. I mean, obviously, these people are trying to just feed their families, and they have this as their livelihood. But, that at the same time, this is also a very positive outcome, that ultimately something is being forged here, something is being created, and right now we're in the midst of it. So we're trying to pull back a little bit, see what's going on, see it from the perspective of this esoteric Jewish tradition, and see how this can inform on our present day what's actually happening. So in the previous classes, I was talking about the nature of how chatbots are developed through what's called an LLM, a large language model. So I was talking about more of the conversant language of AI in those classes. Now I'm going to talk about this desire to create a body to house this AI, and specifically to create a book, right? An AI-written book, right? That's just one example. There's many different approaches. Like a robot is another example, and we're going to talk about that. This desire to house artificial intelligence in something tangible. So where do you see this in Jewish tradition, right? They didn't have the circuitry in the robots back then, but you had this ability to create something. That God gives certain righteous individuals this ability to create a being, to create something. And this is a very fascinating topic that obviously gets the kids interested. It's always a big topic. So this is from, I'm going to read from a portion of the Babylonian Talmud, which is part of the oral tradition of Judaism. This was compiled between the 3rd and 5th century of the Common Era, but this is from statements of sages from a couple hundred years prior, and this all dates back from the giving of the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, over 3,300 years ago. So this is part of the Jewish tradition. So this is one of the sages. His name is Rabbah. He says, if the righteous wish to do so, they can create a world, as it is stated, but your iniquities have separated between you and your God. So all you need but to do is be righteous, and you can create stuff. Why? Because God is allowing you to do that. Because He's allowing you to be a partner in this act of creation. And further, what does it say? Indeed, Rava created a man. What? Right? And this is what do we call this? This is called a golem. Right? Have you ever heard of a golem?
Yeah, I'm very familiar with golems.
Yeah. So this is the first instance of a golem in Jewish tradition. This is again from between the 3rd and 5th centuries.
Mm-hmm.
Using forces of sanctity, and we're going to talk about what was he studying? What did he do? Rava sent his creation before Rabbi Zera. Rabbi Zera would speak to him, but he would not reply. Rabbi Zera said to him, "You were created by one of the members of the group, one of the sages. Return to dust. So you're not a person. Let's go back to dust."
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's actually the way that golem is used in the English language. Is the person who's like that can't speak very well, or that type of. It comes directly from this. That's the actual initial thing. And if you see any dictionary, they'll say it's from a Hebrew word. It's from Jewish tradition. And there's another example of two sages, and they created a calf. Just created a calf. So this it's another topic about cloning and stuff like that. But now we're talking about AI, and through their study of something called Sefer Yetzirah. So what is Sefer Yetzirah? So Sefer Yetzirah literally means book of formation. This is the first book of Kabbalah. This is actually, according to Jewish tradition, this was written by Abraham. It was compiled and actually written down by Rabbi Akiva, one of the greatest sages of the Talmudic period.
Mm-hmm.
So this book of formation, we're going to talk about book of formation. By studying the book of formation, they were able to create things. Right? So first of all, to distinguish between a golem and a robot, right? So a golem, it's not a human, but it has some type of a divine spark, of a holy spark. Because again, these sages were holy people, and they're learning some holy work that dates back all the way to Abraham, right? All the way from the beginning of the Jewish people.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something there, but it's still not a human. So for sure, a robot is just circuitry, right? And this is, again, our hero of the night is Joseph Weizenbaum, who wholeheartedly would agree with that. So what is the most famous golem in Jewish history?
Do I know? No.
So, putting you on the spot. The Golem of Prague. It was created by a very, very great sage called the Maharal of Prague. My wife is actually a descendant of the Maharal. Actually, all of the Hasidic movement is descended from the Maharal. All of the Baal Shems. A Baal Shem literally means a master of a name, but it means a miracle worker who's a master. What name were they master of? They're a master of the God name, the different godly names.
Mm-hmm.
God has different. There's different meditations based on different formations of the Hebrew letters, and someone who's a master in that could do miraculous things. So anyone who's called a Baal Shem, including the Baal Shem Tov, the master of a goodly name, which is the founder of the Hasidic movement, mm-hmm. Is a miracle worker. So my wife is actually a descendant of the Baal Shem of Michelstadt. Just aside. But just to say that the Maharal was a very, very holy and special rabbi, and for him to create a golem, it wasn't just for kicks, right? He did it
to protect the city, right?
Right. So he did it. Right. So he lived in He was born in 1525, passed away in 1609, and at that time there was a lot of blood libels. So he created a golem to protect the Jews, the Jewish inhabitants at that time, from any attacking mobs and hordes and stuff of that nature. It seems very clear that the golem didn't actually have to attack anyone. I don't know if you remember the scene from Indiana Jones when they had the Ark of the Covenant and the
all the stuff that came out of it.
Yeah, the Nazis may their name be erased, and they opened it and they were all killed. And
Mhm.
so, that's fiction, but when something is very holy, and you're trying to come and maraud and attack the Jews, I'm sure they left whatever they had and flee the other way as fast as they could, just by the sight of it. And it's very well substantiated in Jewish tradition that the Maharal did create the golem. It's actually brought in writings of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And actually, there's a pretty well substantiated story that his father-in-law actually went to the attic in Prague and had a very intense experience there. If you search the internet, you'll see that, they sent a film crew in the 80s and they didn't see anything. Well, this golem is what we're talking about, is from the Hebrew word gelem, which means raw matter. What is it made out of? It's like clay, it's dust, so what does that mean that you didn't see the golem? It doesn't mean that there's a person there. It could very well be that right now it's just dust.
Mhm.
Right? You have to be sensitive to these things. You may have just walked on it,
Right.
and not even known. So this is an interesting thing. There was actually there's been so many children's stories around this. Mendy and the Golem was a comic book series. There was a audio story retelling of the story, The Mysterious Golem of Prague, that was narrated by Leonard Nimoy.
Oh, really?
So you can find that online.
Mhm.
So in any event, it's captured the imagination of kids for generations, as one can imagine. So the first thing that we're going to hopefully we dispelled was this whole dystopian science fiction notion from Terminator and 2001: Space Odyssey of these robots rebelling, right? Either hell, kicking out the crew, killing the crew, because I have the mission to complete after all.
He had a point.
That's from 2001: Space Odyssey, or Terminator or something else, any one of these movies. So again, we think that's just delusional. That's like the secretary who thinks she's talking to somebody in 1964. It's not much has changed in terms of that. It's just ChatGPT has become compelling enough that you think you're actually talking to somebody. So that's, again, but at the same time, what is the army that we're seeing now? And especially specifically related to our topic tonight, we're seeing an army of books, an army of AI books that are being published. And Amazon is being flooded with them, and it's a huge issue. Why is it a huge issue? Well, if it's a nonfiction book, a how-to book, if it's just telling you how to do something, that's okay. But if it's something where it's the author is something that's sharing, he's connecting with the reader, he's trying to touch the reader, this is a labor of love, right? This is an expression of his soul, ultimately. If you have creative people like that view themselves as just servants, they're here to convey the message. To whatever extent possible, obviously there's self-interest, but they're also trying to be messengers for good or some inspiration, joy. So imagine if we can't tell the difference between those books, right? And they have all sorts of Turing tests now. The Turing test is from the famous Turing that was instrumental in decoding the Nazi codes in World War II. So he made a test, which was, can you tell if this is from a robot or not? And they do this all the time, and it makes headlines. Can people tell whether this was written by AI or not? And not always. Not always can people tell. So this is really the topic for tonight, is what makes a human, living with the times, with Rosh Hashanah coming up on Friday night, what is our book of life? How do we write a book that people will be able to tell, yes, that was for sure written by a person?
Mm-hmm. We had this whole discussion yesterday afternoon.
Yeah.
Talking about the Turing tests and exactly what you're covering. So this is extremely interesting.
So again, what we like to think of is that the writer is reaching out through the medium of the book. He wants to touch us. He wants to that's how he's connecting to us through this book, right? And so we would like to think that we would be able to tell. Okay. First, we have to go back to what is a golem. Golem, from the Hebrew word golem. Gimel Lamed Mem. And we're going to pair it with another word called chomer. So chomer golem. Ches Mem Resh. These are both three-letter words. Chomer and golem. So we're learning a little bit of Hebrew tonight. So it translates as raw material. So golem is raw, and chomer is like matter. Like when you talk in physics about matter, you talk about either matter that's past the raw state, or you talk about something called HIYULI, like primordial matter or something like that. I don't understand that completely, but you have this pairing of these two terms, chomer and golem. So what is this word chomer? So we said that golem is the same thing as like golem. You're fashioning some raw something, right? So chomer is the same roots as both womb, as rachem, and rachamim, which means mercy. So when we talk about a book, and we're talking about forming something, it's a labor of love, but it's also like, what do we say? You're giving birth to it. Mm-hmm. Right? An author that worked for months and months, maybe years and years on a book, when you publish it, you're relating it to labor, right? Mm-hmm. It has labor pains. It's hard. I've never experienced that, but this is the terminology that's used, right? And this is actually the word. This is the word chomer, matter. You're creating something substantial. Like, what is the monument of today? It used to be that they erected monuments. If you want to leave a monument for a future generation, you write a book. Mm-hmm. Right? So again, this word relates to rachem, to womb, and also to rachamim. So when we talk about, does the book touch you? You're asking, did the writer put what's called their wisdom from the ink into the paper and have it enter the world? And so golem, raw material, is the same value as the word wisdom. Chachma. They're both equal to 73. So we'll stop maybe at 3 Hebrew words.
Sorry, I don't remember them, but
yeah. So it's this idea that you have the author that's imbuing his wisdom into the work, mm-hmm. and that the work should be filled with compassion and empathy. It's coming from his innermost part of the heart, and it's touching the reader. It's a labor of love, and it's like a birthing process. So none of this you have with with robots, right? You don't have a birthing process. You don't have a labor of love. You don't have compassion. You don't have any of that, right? So it's connecting to that humanity and that soul. You're connecting to the author and to the reader. So it's that through the conduit of the book. So chomer, this word matter, also equals 248, which equals Abraham. So Abraham, as we said, how do you chomer golem? You're creating this substance, right? You're creating this raw material, and it's taking a book form. So that also relates to Abraham, and to specifically the wisdom of Abraham. So as we said, golem, the second word equals wisdom. So it's the wisdom of Abraham. Mm-hmm. Okay, so in Hebrew, another Hebrew word. So the word for a book is sefer.
Is what?
Sefer.
Sefer.
Sefer. Okay. In English, it's like S-E-F-E-R. It's the same word as a scribe, someone who's writing like a Torah scroll by hand, and also Sipor, which is book, which is story. Story. So just like you can't copy a Torah scroll with a copier, with a photocopier, has to be done with by hand. Every letter is someone who really loves it and knows all the intricate laws, and he's doing it as a labor of love. Right? It takes a long time to write a Torah scroll, months and months, one letter at a time. So too, when we think of an author, right, we think of something that can't be photocopied or it can't be just generated through AI, right? It has to be, you have to invest your soul in it. And not saying that AI can't be good for like fact checking or for grammar or something like that. It's just a tool, right? But in terms of having something that's going to touch someone, that you're putting yourself into it. So that has to come from the person. Okay. And this is the medium by which the author, in his thoughts and he's publishing it into reality. And by doing that, he's able to create a readership, create a following that's coming to him. Right? What is the first thing that the Nazis did? They burned books. Right? They said you can't learn Torah, and they burned those books. They had big bonfires, right? Because that's how you connect to both to the traditions and to each other to make a people. The Jewish people are called the people of the book. Right? So this is again a little bit about why a book is like at the front lines of this current war, this current battle between what is humanity. Okay, so here we have, I said we were going to talk about the Book of Life. We're coming up on Friday nights. We have the first of 2 days of the Jewish New Year. It's one long day, ending Sunday night. And here we're asking, and this is how we greet people, Kasiva v'chasima tova, should be written and inscribed for a good year. And then before Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year, we say Gamar Chasima Tova, that already this should be sealed for good. So what are we saying? How do we relate this to ourselves? So we need to have a story, create our own exciting story that we're living in terms of our lives. Every day should be like a page turner. Be a compelling, exciting story. We were talking about like this hero Joseph Weizenbaum, right? He's fighting for decades against this idea that robots can become sentient. So all of us have this ability. So what did we say? We said that the righteous are partners in this act of creation. We also said they study this book Sefer Yetzirah, which just means book of formation or putting your ideas in book form. It's the same words. It's called Suras Sefer. To put your teachings, put your thoughts into book form. It's the same words. So what are we saying? Is that we each have this ability to create a story worth living, create a story worth reading, something that's going to be read for generations to come, something that's compelling, that has all the elements of a good story, as we're going to be saying. This actually was said by this great rabbi. His name is Rabbi David of Lelov. And he said that currently we read Bava Kama. That's one of the tractates of the Talmud. We actually quoted from a different tractate of the Talmud called Sanhedrin. So currently we read these different tractates of the Talmud. In the future, there's going to be a tractate called Rabbi David of Lelov. It's going to be the story of my life. And people are going to be reading it. It's going to be like a bestseller. Why a bestseller? Because that's how do you impart messages for that every generation is going to find compelling? Is that through your story. You just tell your story, nothing else. And if you're overcoming challenges, that's something that's noteworthy. If you're just if you're like all these obstacles and challenges that we go through in life, that's something that's compelling. And so we all have this ability to be a little bit righteous, be a little bit holy in our actions, right? And so that's what he was saying, is that you think it's these, we're talking about these sages creating golems and cows, right? No, the real creation is your own book of life. It's the own story that you're creating every single day. Because after the redemption comes, after the Messiah comes, and all of that, things are going to be easier, and they're going to say, well, let's read about how it was. Let's read about when things weren't so clear and there was a lot of confusion. Let's read about what people did there and how they persevered, right? So, like I was saying, you have this strike, right, for instance, and you have this test now of, well, how do you know if something was written by a person or not? Mm-hmm. And you have this ability. You have these great stories that come out of it where people are like finding themselves, and they're really like, it's an opportunity for clarity and for clarification. Because whenever there's a challenge, it's an opportunity for clarification. That's a central thing in Kabbalah. Because it's like a melting pot, a smoldering pot. You're being refined. So, and how do we live our lives? Why are we saying this now? Because we're saying this to God. We're saying, I'm writing my bestseller. I have to be here at least 120 years. Because this is a page turner and people are going to want to read this. I'm doing a lot of important things, right? I have a very compelling, very important mission and purpose in this world. And so I need to be healthy and everything. And that all needs to be taken care of because I have to continue telling this page turner of a story. It's really benefiting a lot of people right now, right? So we're telling this to God. This is a conversation we're having with God. Because on Rosh Hashanah, this Jewish New Year, what are we saying? We're saying that, okay, why again should I keep you around another year, And he wants to have good reasons. Right? God is loving, and he wants to. He's waiting for us to put a list together, mm-hmm. Right? So that's this conversation that this is the time when we're like, okay, let me make a really long list. So I have a lot of reasons why I need to be here. That's what it actually says. You're supposed to make a lot of friends and things. But also, what we're saying now is you're supposed to really have exciting tales in pages and chapters ahead to tell. So that's a good thing. So what is a story? What is a good hallmark of a bestseller? So this is a lot of this is based on my teacher Rabbi Yitzchak Ginsburg, who's a master Kabbalist who lives in Israel. So he said that you have to have these three elements of love, fear, or might. Like you have to have a hero, like as we said, Joseph Weizenbaum. You have to someone who is like really staunch and doesn't care what people think, is really standing up for what's right and true. And you have to also be merciful, right? You have to be compassionate, and you have to have a protagonist, meaning yourself, that people are drawn to, mm-hmm. Right? And so, how does this relate? So, to Abraham. So we said that Abraham was the one that put together what later became this Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Formation. All these mystical secrets of creation. It was the first book of Kabbalah, later compiled by the very great sage Rabbi Akiva. So this phrase, Surah Sefer, making the form of a book out of all your thoughts, right? Out of all your wisdom, putting it into a book, which now we're saying is our book, mm-hmm. is the book that we're living now, our book of life. The Torah is called the book of life, but we are creating our own Torah, so to speak, that people are going to read later for generations to come. So this phrase is equal, the gematria, the numerical value, according to the Hebrew letters, is equal to 1,036. So what's 1,036? So we would expect it to not only relate to the story of Abraham, but we would expect it to relate to the secret behind creating a bestseller. Because what are we saying? why do we want to why do we want our story to be a bestseller? Because we're telling this to God. We're like, I'm in the middle of a bestseller, writing the bestseller here that people are not only going to benefit for generations to come, but right now, right? So this phrase, 1036, exactly equals the Shlosha Anashim, the three men that visited Abraham. Who are the three men that visited Abraham? Do you remember from the Bible?
No.
So the three men that visited Abraham were the three angels. After his circumcision, I believe it was 99, so he was in quite a bit of pain. It was the third day after. So these three people came. Abraham loved having guests, and he was very upset that he didn't have guests. Why didn't he have guests? Because God was trying to have him take it easy and heal from the circumcision. But he so much wanted to have guests that he was waiting in the desert for people to come. These nomads would come, and he would offer them food and drink if only they would praise God. So he spread the word of God in the middle of the desert. So suddenly three people appear. It's very mysterious, and the sages all say that these are angels. And which angels are these? These are the angels Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael. Right? And they each came for a specific purpose. That Raphael came to heal Abraham from the circumcision and to save his nephew Lot. Michael came to inform them that a child would soon be born to them, and that was Isaac. And Gabriel came to destroy the city of Sodom. So, how does this relate to a bestseller? These are exactly correspond to the three things we just said: love, courage. Right? We need a hero of the story, and you have the love. You have to be able to have someone who's passionate about life, and then either compassion or healing. And so that's Michael, Gabriel is courage, hero, and Raphael. It's a healing or rachamim, which is, again, we said is compassion, mercy. So again, this book form, creating a book, specifically you want to create a bestseller, equals 136, right? This phrase book form, which is the same words as book of formation, which is attributed to Abraham, is the same value as the three angels that visited Abraham, and is the secret of creating a bestseller. So it's coming full circle. and what is Abraham most known for? Was his simple faith in God. He overcame a lot of tests, 10 tests, but his main inheritance that we have now is the simple faith. And when things seem confusing, they're really not. They're really, really not. We just have to align ourselves with these timeless ideas. So again, what's our story? Is that we're passionate about life, right? We're overcoming challenges. We want others to benefit. We want to connect with others, both our spouse, our children, everyone that we meet. We want real and lasting friendships, the people that are going to really feel like we're there for them, right? And then every day we want to be a page turner. So this is actually relates to the number of the year that we're coming to right now. So there's a separate Jewish calendar, right? So we're coming to the Jewish year 5784.
Okay.
So in Hebrew, this is Tav Shin Pei Dalet. It's actually Hey Tav Shin Pei Dalet. So the convention is that we make phrases out of the year, like acronyms out of the year, and those are like lasting meditations that we think about as we go through the year. So the convention for this century is Tav Shin, stands for it should be a year of, Tehei Shnat. It should be a year of, and then we fill it in with whatever the year is. So Pei Dalet. So this is just a thought that I had. It should be a year of Pei Dalet, if we change the order, is Daf, which means page. It should be a year of creating a page turner. We're writing the story of our life. It's a story. It's a book of life, and it should be a page turner for all generations. A Daf. And so every day we're writing that page. It should be a page turner. And so many people are familiar that there's this idea of learning a page of the Talmud every day. It's called Daf Yomi. So this idea that every day we're filling in our page. And it said of Abraham that his days were filled. Bo Bayamim, that every day he filled it. So it's a good idea, if possible, to write in a journal, like for instance, every night. Just to think before going to bed, was our day filled? And if not, then we have tomorrow. And every day we have that in mind, right? To make a page turner. And again, it's with that we're submitting our outline or our plot synopsis to God. We're saying, okay, this is what I'm planning for this year, right? And then you're saying, listen, I gotta have my income, I gotta have my health, I gotta have, in order for this to happen, I gotta have all these things. It's obviously done in a sincere and earnest way. It's an open conversation, but that's the relationship. And so, any questions?
I wish that you had that I could read that after, because
You can take this.
there's just so much there that is to go back and think about it. Not your part.
It's fine.
I saved these. Believe me, we use them. No, I just think the whole thing is fascinating. How you can relate it back so far.
All right, thank you very much. If you want to,
And it helps